Hello and welcome everyone on YouTube and on Discord. Thank you for joining us again to our online Dhamma group, which we have every week. And we read together and study Buddhist texts. And we are very happy to be, as usually, joined by Venerable Dhamma, who is residing in Sri Lanka and teaching at the Sirimangalo International Meditation Center. We are currently reading the Discourses by the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw on the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. After 1 hour of reading, we will stop and then have time for discussions and asking questions. And before we start, we will take together the 5 precepts, and everyone here is welcome to join us, both on YouTube and on Discord, and recite with us, even if we cannot hear you, because it's a very wholesome act, and we encourage everyone to take part in this. Today, Edith would like to lead the precepts for us. So when you're ready, you can start, Edith. Thank you.
Bante Tisaranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachami Dutiyampi Ahang Bante Tisaranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachami Dutiyampi Ahang Bante Tisaranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachami.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Saranagamanang nititang.
Amabante.
Panatipata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata Vairamani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Adinadana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana Vairamani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Amesu michachara viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamisu Michachara Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Musavada Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Musavada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Sura Miraya Majjapamadatthana Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Suramiraya Pamadhatthana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Imani Pancha Sikkhapadani Silena Subatinyanti Silena Bhoga Sampada Silena Nibuddhyanti Masi Langvisodhaye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So before we continue reading, I will explain shortly how we read. This will be for each person 2 paragraphs. If it's very short, you can read one more. We take pauses between each paragraph, so there's time for an explanation or a question. And also please take your time when reading, because we are not rushing and we want to digest everything. We are currently at the sentence that starts with, "Thus it may be taken," and Edit was the last person, but Edit, you can start today with one more sentence, and I will post the reading order now.
He is in
Thus,
the audience as well.
Bante,
Sorry,
you're very quiet for me.
I didn't
Hello.
hear what you said.
Everyone's.
Hello, hello. Hello, hello.
Okay,
Yeah,
now
it's better now.
can you please repeat what you said, Bante?
Bante, can you hear us?
Yes.
We thought you were saying something. Can
Go
you
ahead.
repeat, please? Oh, okay. Thus, it may be taken here that the exposition on right mindfulness given at the time of the first discourse was omitted and the sutta recited in brief during the first council. Thus, the question need not arise as to how the deeper, detailed meaning of the Noble Eightfold Path could be known from mere headings. Nowadays, the 4 foundations of mindfulness are well known by many. There is the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta itself, which supplies elaborations on the summarized title of the Noble Eightfold Path. There exists also many commentaries on this sutta. Yet, in spite of them, there are only a few who knows how to develop the path factor of right mindfulness. Therefore, my opinion is that the Blessed One expounded the path factors in full detail when he was giving the first discourse for the benefit of many.
Right, so what he's saying sort of is that if the Buddha had just taught the four satipatthana, many people wouldn't understand it. Just like today, people know what the satipatthana are in Burma, Myanmar, where the Venerable was teaching. Most people knew what the four satipatthana were, but very few of them actually could practice it or did undertake to practice it or knew how to properly practice it. And so his feeling is that in order for most benefit, the Blessed One probably taught in more detail so that people could actually put them into practice. Learning the four satipatthana usually isn't enough to put in practice. That being said, they are a really, really great thing to learn by heart. There's just four of them, but not just learn by heart, but to take as very sort of the core of the Dhamma. So these four words are so very, very special. Kaya, Vedana, Citta, Dhamma. If you just learn those four words, it's like the key to the door. You have that key with you. Doesn't mean you've opened the door yet, but those four are the key, and without that key, you can't open the door. The door to the Dhamma, the door to wisdom. These four satipatthana were something that my teacher insisted everyone memorize. First came to practice, and was constantly or repeatedly reminding everyone or impressing upon everyone how valuable it was to just learn these four words. He said, if you learn these four words and if you were to die having memorized these four words, you wouldn't go to hell. You'd go to heaven because of the power of the Dhamma. When you've memorized them, or when you're memorizing them, if you were to die in that moment, you go to heaven. And he tells the story of the frog. Remember the frog from last week? So he would always tell the story of the frog. He said, just like this frog who was listening to the Buddha's teaching and didn't have a clue what it meant, and still went to heaven. And he said, well, we're all better than those. We're all better than frogs. The opportunity to learn what it means. So then he would explain what the four of them mean, and that's the point here, is that with the four satipatthana, they're a very special thing, and the Dhamma of the Buddha in general is a very special thing that can reasonably lead you to heaven just by knowing it, just by keeping it in mind. Practicing it is a whole other level.
It must be firmly noted that the path factor of right mindfulness is the four foundations of mindfulness. Now, how this path factor should be developed is provided in the Pali text just quoted. This Pali text is exactly the same as the summarized introductory passage to the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. Finding this brief account inadequate for full understanding, one can have recourse to deep study of the Mahasatipatthana Sutta itself. According to the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, contemplation of the body, Kayanupasana, may be carried out in two ways, either by contemplating respiration, Anapanasati, for example, watching the in-breath and out-breath, or contemplating the 32 constituent parts of the body, such as head hair, body hair, etc. The commentary states that these two sections of the Satipatthana Sutta are meditation objects producing the attainment of absorption, apana jhana. The remaining 19 sections of the Satipatthana Sutta are meditation objects producing access concentration, upachara kammatthana, by which insight meditation is meant, which produces only access concentration, upachara samadhi.
I think the translation misses something here. I'm pretty sure there's a mistake in the way it's phrased. First of all, the Pali is very weird, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but I'll explain that. But first I want to explain the two ways that the Venerable is referring to are not the way it's sort of laid out here. The two ways are the first two, right? Those first two, contemplating anapanasati or the 32 constituent parts of the body, that's one way. That's apana, that leads to apana samadhi. Samadhi. The word jhana and kammatthana are just confusing here because not really how you say that. I mean, jhana is apana samadhi. So there's three kinds of samadhi, or there's basically two kinds of samadhi, apana and upachara. Apana means attainment, means you've attained, means a very fixed concentration. So it's a trance sort of state. And upachara means neighborhood or approach. Literally something like approach, means it approaches that, but it's flexible in a way. It's not fixed like apana, like the samatha jhanas. So the first type of meditation is those first two. They are, as the commentary states, that those two sections, which are the first of the two types, are apana samadhi, lead to apana. They aren't apana samadhi, they lead to apana samadhi. Apana samadhi. The other type, the second type, is the remaining 19 sections, which only lead to upachara samadhi because they take ultimate reality as an object. So anapanasati had to take the breath as an object, which is kind of conceptual. Like if you follow the breath going in, like the breath goes in, the breath goes out. Well, that's not reality, that's a concept. The reality is the feeling, the sensation. So if you follow the breath in one, out one, it's conceptual. So anapana is usually refers to that type of meditation where you're calming the mind and heading towards a trance state. The 32 constituent parts of the body are also focused on concepts. Like when you say hair or teeth or skin, you're not actually experiencing those things. You can't actually experience them. It's an idea. When you see, for example, if you look at your hand and you see the skin, you say, oh, that's skin. Or when in your mind you think of the skin or your teeth, you visualize or you conceptualize those things. It's still only a concept. The reality is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, and thinking, which lead to the arising of the concept. Oh, this is hair, this is this. But it's actually just experience. So when you say hair, you're focused on a concept. And thereby, because like hair doesn't stop being hair. So you can say the hair doesn't change. Yes, hair changes, but hair as an idea doesn't change. And because of that, it allows for the mind to be fixed and focused on it. Allows you to enter into a jhana. Reality doesn't allow for that. Seeing doesn't allow for that because seeing arises and ceases. It's real. Pain arises and ceases. Pleasure arises and ceases. Even calm arises and ceases. And if you focus on them and take them as an object, you'll see that. And it therefore can only ever lead to upachara samadhi. It's focused, but it's also flexible. It's not fixed like apana samadhi. You can only get apana samadhi based on concepts. So if it's not clear, if it wasn't clear from that paragraph, I should make it clear there. The two types are, the first type is those first two, and the second type is all the other 19. So if you read the Satipatthana Sutta, you can see this is under Kaya Nupassana, under contemplation of the body. So this is the first of the four Satipatthana. And this is, he goes into detail like this because Kaya Nupassana is really where you start practicing. Even according to the Visuddhimagga, it says focus on Rupa, which is Kaya, focus on the body. And if you notice in the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha gives the most emphasis on the Kaya Nupassana. He goes into quite detail, and that's why there are a total of 21 sections. The other three Satipatthana don't have that many sections.
It is only required to select any of the meditation objects mentioned in the remaining 19 sections of for development of the path factor of right mindfulness, Samasati Maganga. In accordance with the instructions in the section on body postures, while walking, the bodily movements involved in the act of walking should be noted. Gacchanto va gacchamiti pajanati. While standing, sitting, lying down, the bodily movements involved in each action should be noted. In accordance with the instruction to note however the body is disposed. Yata yata wa panasa kayo panihito hoti tata tata nang pajanati. If there are other postures or movements, they should also be noted carefully. Here, special attention should be paid to the grammatical tense employed in gacchanto va gacchamiti, etc. It definitely refers to noting the present action only. It should be thoroughly understood that learning by role and pondering the types of materiality as enumerated in the Abhidhamma does not amount to contemplation of the body. Kaya Nupassana Satipatthana. In addition, as mentioned in the section on mindfulness with clear comprehension, Sampajana Pabang, all bodily movements involved in going forward or coming back, looking ahead or looking aside, bending or stretching the limbs should be noted.
So this is a great paragraph. The Satipatthana Sutta is just such a great sutta. I mean, it's a good example of why learning Pali is valuable. It's not extremely valuable, but there's value to it. The Satipatthana Sutta is a great reason for that, because the Pali is very precise and very meaningful, and he alludes to this in a couple of instances. So let's go through it a little bit here. So right mindfulness is samasati maganga. Maganga means anga of magga. Anga just means like member. We've seen this word before. Maganga is a member of the path. So the Eightfold Noble Path, one of the 8 parts is sati, mindfulness. Mindfulness isn't a great translation, but it's the word we use, and we assume that we know what it means when we use it. But it's not. The English isn't quite accurate. It's more like remembrance, or like remembrance, the ability to recollect. So in this, in terms of samasati, it means recollecting the present moment. instead of getting lost in concepts, recollecting the reality of the experience. That's why the word is used, or what it means. Then this phrase, it's a very, hear me say it from time to time if you hang around, and it's a common thing to hear in our tradition. Gachanto wa gachamiti pajanati. Pajanati means one knows. Janati means one knows. But janati is kind of the idea here is one knows fully, or one knows. I mean, the reason for using the prefix but is meaningful, because it's again alludes to what he's saying. You're not just knowing something intellectually. But janati means you really know it. So it's not like there's some secret knowing that goes on. It's just like you really are aware of it. So the usage of the word like pajanati, which is where the word panya comes from, it's the same word as panya, which means wisdom. And the usage of the word, you can see down below, kaya nupassana. It looks a lot like vipassana, right? That's because it's the same verb, the same root, vipassana. Passana means to see. So the Buddha didn't use words like contemplation. You see the English here is contemplation, and you'll see that quite often in translations of Satipatthana. Actually, I argued this and then I looked it up. Contemplation is okay because of the word is used in ways that I wasn't quite clear about. But contemplation can actually be like when you contemplate a pool of water, which I kind of forgot about. So it's okay, but a simpler word, because contemplation often, I understand it to be, when you think about something, you contemplate means you think, not look at. But it actually is used, it actually means that. But a simpler way would be to just say seeing. One sees, because that's literally what it is. So the Buddha used these words to give an idea of what he would, to help impress upon the listener that this wasn't just contemplation in a Western sense, like where you think about something, you mull it over in your mind. You actually are contemplating, as in you're sitting beside it and looking at it. So gachanto wa gachamiti. And then this very, very valuable phrase that often gets overlooked, but it's very, very valuable. People will often ask, do you have to sit in a certain way? Is it important, the posture of the sitting? And there's often privilege put on a special sitting posture, or privilege put on the formal meditation practice. But the Buddha dispels that with this phrase, yatha yatha va panasa kayo panihito hoti tatha tatha nang pajanati. What does this mean? Yatha yatha is yatha yatha tatha tatha. This is a foreign structure. It's hard to explain in English, but repetition like this is a way of saying however. Like yatha would mean how, and yatha yatha means however, like in whatever way. Yatha yatha, it's like an English way, this way, that way. Yatha yatha is a way of saying however. Wa here is referring back to the other ones, because he said when walking, one should know I am walking. Or, the wa here means or. So after he said walking, standing, sitting, lying, the four postures that we privilege often. We say these are the four postures and try to be mindful of them. But you can also be you can also be mindful. Yatha yatha, however. Wa pana. Pana goes with wa, it doesn't really mean anything. Or on the other hand, is the kind of asakayo, one's body. However one's body, panihita means sent, but disposed. In English we would say, however your body is disposed. So however your body finds itself, like when you fling something down, you throw a blanket on a bed or something, the blanket falls in a certain way. That's the idea, the body falls in a certain way, however it finds itself. It means however the body is. Tatha tatha. And that goes with yatha yatha. In Pali they make it very formal, like however, and then whatever the opposite would be of, or the pair of however would be. So in whatever way, in that ever way. Nang pajanati, one, and then again this word pajanati, one knows fully, or one has wisdom is really what it's saying. The word, because the word wisdom in Pali means this sort of thing. It doesn't mean intellectual introspection, it doesn't mean logical conclusion, it doesn't mean reasoning something out, it doesn't mean the ability to argue. It means you actually saw it, you know it. You actually knew it for yourself by direct experience. Nang bhajanati, one knows for oneself, or one knows clearly that, is aware of that. So if you're squatting, you can say to yourself, squatting, squatting. If you're leaning, you can say leaning, leaning. And he doesn't go into detail here at the Pali, but other parts of the Pali do say when bending or stretching or that sort of thing, and extending the arm, flexing the arm, that sort of thing. Then he says something valuable that with gachanto, he points out how gachanto wa gachamiti, the word he's referring to is gachanto when he talks about the present moment, because gachanto is a present participle, which means it's like the ing, when going or when walking. Gachanto, when walking, one knows I am walking. So what he's saying here is that you can't contemplate walking intellectually and say you're developing the four satipatthana. The only way to develop the four satipatthana is when you're walking. It's just a very simple thing, but because in Myanmar and with Buddhists who come to Buddhism intellectually, reading texts and so on, there can arise this idea that you know the Dhamma because you've studied it, and you don't really know it. And this isn't following the Buddha's teaching where he says, gachanto, when you're actually walking, then you know I'm walking. And then he reminds us of this phrase, kaya anupassana satipatthana. So satipatthana is the foundation of mindfulness, and this is the foundation of mindfulness that involves seeing passana in regards to the body. In other words, seeing the body as body. Kaya anupassi viharati. One dwells seeing the body in the body. What that means is, in regards to the body, one sees the body. And it's a way of saying to know something as it is. So when you say walking, that's knowing the walking, as me, as mine, as good, as bad, not with all the interpretations. It's just walking. When sitting, nisino wa nisino miti bhajanati. This is knowing body. In regards to the body, one sees body. You don't see me, you don't see mine, you don't see good, you don't see bad, and so on. And then, so then in the Sampajana Pabang, Paba means section. So in the section on Sampajana, which Sampajana is, it's a part of mindfulness, really. I mean, it's often phrased as the counterpart to Sati, where Sati is the act of reminding yourself, or it's the remembering that comes from reminding yourself when you say walking or standing or pain or thinking or so on. And Sampajanya is what arises as a result of that, or the quality of mind that is caused by that. Because when the mind is firmly grasping the object as it is without any doubt or any interpretation, then you have full knowledge of it, which is really just another, I mean, technically it's just wisdom, but the Buddha gives special emphasis on this full knowledge because of the quality of mind the very special quality of mind that one experiences. A practitioner will realize, will appreciate the preciousness of this. So the Buddha gives it a special name, Sampajanya. In reality, it's just the awareness of the thing as it is, but it feels something quite pure and special when you practice it. So this is the special state, is Sampajanya. I mean, it's just very pure, very clean, without any judgment, without any, without any attachment. But in that section, what's called the Sampajana Paba, the Buddha talks about all the basic, or the minor movements, looking ahead, looking aside, bending or stretching, and all of that.
Momentary concentration for insight. According to the section on attention to the elements, dhatu, manasikara pabang, the four primary elements should be noted as they become manifest. The Visuddhimagga explicitly states that when the hindrances are completely overcome by contemplating the four primary elements, access concentration arises. This access concentration, as explained in the Visuddhimagga Mahatika, is not in the neighborhood of absorption, apana samadhi, and as such is not true access concentration. Nevertheless, since it is akin to access concentration in its capacity to overcome the hindrances and producing tranquility, it assumes the name of access concentration by virtue of its capacities.
This the ideas in this paragraph cause a lot of controversy among learned Theravada Buddhists. Who believe different things about this. People who are dogmatic will say the only true concentration is jhana, or is the samatha jhanas, no? And you need them. And so what the Venerable is saying here is that, yes, there are two types of concentration, upachara and apana. And so in layman's terms, this means, as I said, sometimes your mind is focused, but still moving from object to object, but it's pure. I mean, there's no greed, no liking, disliking, drowsiness, distraction, doubt. The hindrances are dispelled. And usually, in most types of meditation, that's a precursor to jhana, because once your mind is pure like that, you can apply it to a conceptual object, like a color for the kasina, or light, or one of the elements, or you can focus it on loving kindness, wishing all beings to be well and happy. These sorts of things will fix the mind because they're focused on concepts. But there are other types of, or there's another type of concentration which has the same faculty but could never lead to jhana, samatha jhana, could never lead to this trance, tranquility state. Because again, the objects are arising and ceasing. So if you're focused on things that are arising and ceasing, then your mind is going to jump from one object to another, but still stay pure, free from the hindrances. And it has to jump because the thing it was noting, was contemplating, observing, has disappeared. And so then it goes on to the next object, even watching the stomach. So it's why so much, it's a cause for so much consternation among new practitioners in the practice of mindfulness, where they'll focus on the stomach rising, falling, but they find that the mind can't settle down. It's impossible to fix on it because it's changing. Sometimes it's short, sometimes it's long, sometimes it just disappears, and it just constantly confounds your ability to stay focused. So eventually your mind sort of lets go and becomes more equanimous about that, more flexible, less reactionary, and the hindrances fade away and the mind is pure, but the objects are still changing. They're unpredictable, they're impermanent, and so it can never lead to a fixed state of concentration like the jhanas, like the samatha jhana. It's another type of jhana, it's called lakhanupani jhana. That's a whole other topic. So all he's saying here is that this is orthodox, that there are these two types of concentration, and that it's not possible to have vipassana arise if you're fixed and focused on a concept, obviously, because concepts will never allow you to see the three characteristics. They're not impermanent, they're not unstable, they're not unsatisfying, and they're not non-self. You can control them. Because the control, the permanence is all illusion, it's all conceptual. Every time you look at a concept like the color white. Every time you look at it, it's still white. It doesn't change. And so it seems, it appears, it's conceived as stable, satisfying, and controllable. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller. That's how the casinos work. But it's because it's not real that it's possible to, or it appears to be doing that, because it's all cerebral, it's all conceptual, that, oh, I'm controlling this, and so on. You're ignoring the fact that there's lots and lots, that the reality of what's going on in the background is all impermanent, unsatisfying, uncontrollable. So, yeah, in order to see clearly, you have to leave behind the fixed state on a single object and focus on reality, which is never going to lead to Appana Samadhi. The benefits of Appana Samadhi are mostly that, well, the peaceful feeling of being fixed and focused in a very strong state, but also the strength of mind that comes from it. It can lead to certain magical powers, or seemingly magical powers of clairvoyance and that sort of thing. Astral travel is a common one. Oh, and here he's going to talk about this. He's going to go into detail in the next paragraph.
For the purposes of insight meditation, we have used the term momentary. Wait, am I repeating something that's just been said?
That is correct, I think, for the purpose, yes.
Okay. For the purposes of insight meditation, we have used the term momentary concentration for insight, vipassana kanika samadhi, to describe the said concentration. Some people find it difficult to understand this usage and criticize its use. They maintain that insight cannot be developed by means of momentary concentration. They argue that, if it were possible, monastic students studying the scriptures should be able to acquire insight knowledge. We could accept this view if the students' concentration were strong enough to dispel the hindrances, and if, at the same time, they were contemplating on the mental and physical phenomena at the moment of their arising, in accordance with the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. However, it is plain that the concentration involved in the recitation of and reflection on the scriptures that students have learned by heart is not intense enough to overcome the hindrances, nor are they noting mental and physical phenomena at the moment of their arising. Our critic is therefore obviously not conversant with the correct practice of insight meditation.
It's not the problem with these hypothetical monastic students is not the level of their concentration. Is kind of the level of their concentration. It's not that they're the problem isn't that they are not absorbed on a single object. The problem is that their objects are, well, first of all, chaotic. There's no rhyme or reason to what they're focusing on, because they'll be distracted by the concepts. If you've ever done any kind of memorization, there's not any kind of rhyme or reason, because it flips from one concept to the other. You conceptualize. Suppose even we take the Satipatthana Sutta. Well, if you're going to memorize it, you have to be thinking about the Buddha, where he was staying, and all of that is conceptual. It's not reality, right? And then you flip to thinking about someone sitting and watching their stomach. So you have this idea in your mind of a person sitting with their legs crossed, and then you have the idea of the person walking and standing. So it's all conceptual, and it's flipping from one thing to another. So no potential at all for concentration. If you were to just memorize even the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Satipatthana Sutta, they're all great teachings. But the words themselves and you repeating them, even if you're aware of what you're repeating, it's all just conceptual. It's a story, right? Story, and it's not meant to be recited. It's meant to be listened to, so that your mind can be directed in the right way. And yeah, so first of all, your mind is scattered. by jumping from one concept to the other. And the second is that it's all conceptual. So you're never going to be focused on your own, walking. If you're sitting still and you're thinking about a person walking, gachanto wa gacha, and you're contemplating this, intellectually, where is your mind? Is your mind focused on the reality of you sitting still? Absolutely not. It is possible that by studying the text, when you come to the spot, nisino wa nisino miti pajanati, when sitting, one knows when sitting, then you can reflect on that. Oh, I'm sitting. What if I were to pay attention to sitting? And then you pay attention to the pressure, like all of us sitting now. Most of us are probably sitting down. Are you aware of the sitting posture? Are you mindful of the fact that you're sitting? And when I ask you that, it's quite possible that many of you suddenly become aware, yes, I'm sitting, and you're aware of the pressure on the back and the bottom, and you can be mindful of that. So it is possible that reciting and listening can lead to contemplation, but the reciting itself is not at all like mindfulness. So as he points out, a critic has no clue what they're talking about if such a person were to argue in this way. So the argument people have is that it's not strong enough concentration, and that's not the point. The point is that it's not focused on the right things, it's not focused on real things, it's not very focused at all.
In Visuddhimagga, momentary concentration for insight is mentioned as momentary unification of the mind, kanika citte katagata, in its sub-commentary. It is referred to as concentration lasting for a moment, kanamatatitiko samadhi. Thus, based on the authority of the commentary and the sub-commentary, we have employed the term momentary concentration for insight to describe the concentration which is, by virtue of identity, access concentration. Once these explanations are well understood, confusion will surely cease in the minds of our critics.
Kanika just means, kana means moment. Kanika is that which has a moment, that which has a kana. Karnika. Kanika jit ekagata. Ekagata means gone to oneness or one-pointedness. Chitta is the mind. Kanamatatitiko samadhi. Concentration that fixed for just a moment. So it's this momentary concentration that is required for vipassana, for seeing clearly. Why? Because the things that you're seeing clearly only last for a moment. So it can't be longer than that. Once the thing ceases, the mind has to take a new object, and you're required to apply concentration to that object. It's very different from meditation, ability meditation.
Bante, access concentration is the moment when the hindrances are absent. Is that correct understanding?
Sorry, say again?
Just to understand, what is access concentration? Is that when the hindrances are absent and it lasts for a moment? Is that right?
So it's important to understand the usage of the word access. It's this upachara word. Upachara means something like neighborhood. And it used to be translated as neighborhood. It was a very common translation, maybe still is. That's kind of what it means. It means something that is close to that is approaching something else. So it's usually refers to that concentration that leads to jhana. When you're there, you're free from the hindrances, and it's that which will allow you to enter jhana. But there are even some samatha practices, like Buddhanusati is said to only lead to upachara samadhi. It means it can never lead to jhana. And the idea is because the Buddhanusati is actually focusing on the qualities of the Buddha, which as qualities arise and cease. That's the idea. I'm not really sure about that, but that's what the Visuddhimagga says. Anyway, The point is that it's close to jhana, but it can also be focused on a single object with Kanika Samadhi, momentary concentration. It can only ever be a moment, but it's like upachara, or it's considered upachara samadhi. No, it will never lead to jhana. It has the same quality as states of concentration that lead to jhana. What we practice is called momentary concentration. So in brief, you can say there are three types of concentration. There's the concentration where the mind is fixed and focused on a single object. There's the concentration where the mind is fixed or is focused but not fixed on a single object. And then there is, there is momentary concentration, which I guess you could say, but easier to say there are two types. There's that which is fixed and focused, that which is just focused but not yet fixed. But some of that is not yet fixed, focused on ultimate reality, so it will never get fixed. Why? Because the objects are arising and ceasing. And some of it is just premature. It's not there yet. It's moving towards being fixed and focused. It's samatha concentration, but it's not yet fixed and focused. What we practice is the former type, the momentary that will never become fixed and focused, but will be focused. It's just that it can't be fixed because the objects arise and cease. But both of those types are upachara, or considered to be upachara.
Right. So just to re-clarify again, at the moment of, let's say, we being mindful, and at that moment, is it fair to say that for that moment you have access concentration or no?
Yes.
Okay, I got it now. Thank you, Bante.
Well, it's more like with enough moments of concentration, with enough moments of noting, the mind becomes concentrated. So it's like drops of water. Drops of water come together to be a big pot of water, or even a flood. When it rains, the rain can become a flood, means there's lots of water. So moments of concentration are very weak. So just one moment isn't really considered upachara samadhi. But if you do it enough, you'll see there's a consistent absence of hindrances. And that's what characterizes samadhi, whether it be upachara or apana. So
Yes.
it's more from consistent application of mindfulness eventually leads to the non-arising of the hindrances for a prolonged time.
That's even more clear. Thank you, Bante.
Are you able to continue, Sibit?
Yes. As stated above, if contemplation of materiality is accomplished by noting it as it arises, in accordance with the sections on postures, Iriya Pata Pabang, clear comprehension, Sampajana Pabang, and attention to elements, Datu Manasika Rapabang, access concentration, which may be termed momentary concentration, is developed. Together with it, insight knowledge, which is also known as the right view of insight, Vipassana Samadhi, is also developed. These are then the path factors of right mindfulness, right concentration, and right view, otherwise called the foundation of mindfulness with regard to contemplation of the body, Kaya Nupassana Satipatthana.
So again, Pabba is just sections. So these are just sections of the Satipatthana Sutta. It's in the Kaya Nupassana section, the section on mindfulness or seeing the body clearly. There are different sections, different Pabba. That means, so there's the one about Iryapata. Iryapata means postures. Sampajana is the minor postures and that sort of thing. When speaking, when being quiet, when urinating and defecating, it talks about. Dhatu Manasikara Pabba is the section on reflection on the elements. So when you watch the stomach rising and falling, this is the Vayu Dhatu, the element of pressure or the air element. So the pressure of the stomach and then the release of the pressure, that's part of the four elements. Heat is one of the elements, that sort of thing. Insight knowledge isn't a great translation. The word insight I don't like for vipassana. It's just because of how it's used in English. And insight knowledge gives the idea that, again, it's kind of intellectual, like you have some kind of insight. Like, some insight arose. That's not really what it means. Vipassana doesn't mean that at all. It means vipassana means seeing clearly. Again and again, if you listen in Thai, any Thai person translating this, vipassana kwam hen chang. Hen chang. Hen chang just means see clearly. Even samaditi, ditti actually is the same as basana. It doesn't look the same. But the root bas and the word ditti have the same root, sort of. The root for ditti is das, but das and pas are actually the same word, like literally. They're just used interchangeably. So ditti, this very familiar word, right? View. Why is it called view? Because when you see ditta, something that is seen is ditta, dasana. It's where pasana, dasana is literally the same word. And so when we talk about view, samaditi is really just seeing for yourself through vipassana. They're the same concept, actually. Not even talking about two different things. So insight and view are not really talking about something intellectual. They're really just talking about seeing clearly. Best way to translate vipassana is not insight. Seeing clearly. It's such a powerful phrase. You should get used to translating vipassana as seeing clearly. It makes perfectly clear what you're doing. So you practice and you observe and you remind yourself, you keep yourself just on the experiences as they are, and you'll see clearly. You'll see, most importantly, you'll see three things clearly. Impermanence, that everything inside you and in the world around you is changing, unpredictable, unstable. Second, that everything inside you and in the world around you is satisfying, not worth clinging to, not worth anything, not worth attachment, valueless, worthless. And third, that everything inside you and in the world around you is not self. It's not you, it's not yours, it's not under your control. You'll see this. This is what you will see clearly. And it's these things that allow one to let go, that lead to freedom, lead to release, lead to nibbana. So, pretty simple, just not very easy. Simple but not easy.
I think you can finish the paragraph and then we will stop here, Shibitsu.
I'm sorry, did you say you want me to read one more
Not finish
paragraph?
the paragraph.
No, I misspoke, sorry. But actually, okay, I think it's fine. We can stop here. I meant finish your second paragraph. But we can stop here since we've almost reached the hour already. And everyone is welcome to write down their questions if they're not in the speaking reading group. both on Discord or on YouTube. And we encourage everyone to ask their meditation-related questions if they have questions about their own practice, if they're unsure about something, if they're practicing correctly, or whatever is in your mind. If you want to ask, you're welcome to do it now. Or also related questions to the text we have just read, or Buddhist questions. And the Venerable will be happy to answer your questions if they're important ones. So also people on Discord, you are encouraged to use your microphone if you have something to ask.
And just to
Bhante.
reiterate, to repeat, we're going through the text very slowly, and I think that's a good way to go about it. But I appreciate that people might be champing at the bit, trying to get more knowledge, and there's lots of knowledge out there. And knowledge can be valuable. It's not to dissuade you from gaining knowledge, but it's not really what we're trying to do here. I think it's more useful for us to try and refer back to our practice as much as possible and apply these teachings, explain these teachings in ways that relate to some mindfulness, which seems to take time, and I think it's good to take that time. Time is precious, but it's kind of too precious to waste on just learning everything. We should instead use our time in the most valuable way, the most efficient way. And that is to refer back to mindfulness so that we might apply mindfulness as best we can.
Thank you for explaining that, Bhante. The first question that we have today is the Bhava chakra commonly referenced in Theravada settings? I find the imagery motivating for practice, particularly in the way it evokes samvega.
The wheel of becoming, I think. What are you talking about? Birth, old age, sickness, and death. I mean, that's a very central concept. The nature of suffering. Suffering goes beyond just pain, no? It's not just be mindful and you'll be less stressed. Don't be mindful and you won't have to be reborn again and again and again. You won't get old, sick, and die again and again and again. The meaning of dukkha is that it's incessant, unending, meaningless, pointless repetition of the same old thing. Special. Just get old, sick, and die no matter where you go. Yeah, that's valuable for sure. I think it's difficult because there's a lot of skepticism and doubt about the reality of rebirth. There's a perception that rebirth is something we believe, but it's not something that we believe. In fact, rebirth is something that we experience every moment. We're reborn every moment. That's really what rebirth means. It's actually misleading because nothing is reborn. Nothing is born again. It's just the means. The refers to again is birth. Having been one birth, there is another birth. Meaning one experience is born and dies. moment the next experience is born and dies. Pay close enough attention to reality, you appreciate that that's inexorable. It doesn't end, it can't be stopped, you can't prevent further birth. So there's no belief involved in rebirth. There's an experience. You see it again and again. The belief that somehow at the moment of death, I mean, it's a fairly reasonable, though incorrect belief, that when the body stops working, the mind stops working. It's not evidenced, is that a word? Evidenced by experience. It's not something you observe. You don't observe this happening. Oh, look, there, reality just stopped happening. Experience just stopped happening. That doesn't happen. What you instead experience is again and again, further and further experience. So you don't need belief for that. But nonetheless, it's a concept that people aren't familiar with. It's something that they aren't able to remember. Able to remember it having happened to them before, where the body died and the mind continued. But pay close enough attention. If you're familiar enough with the way reality works, it's very clear that that's what's going on, and it's no leap of faith. Appreciate that that continues at the moment of death. The moment of death is not anything that special. It is special, but not in that way. In terms of rebirth, it's just another moment. The moment of death arises and ceases, and then another moment arises and ceases, and that's important because you're kind of stuck wherever you get reborn, but not stuck at all because it's just moment experience. So wherever you go, it's still the same seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking. So I guess in that sense, the bhava chakra, if that's what you call it, it's not deeply important. It's valuable in terms of appreciating the sort of deeper reasons for practicing beyond just, oh, this will help with my stress in this life. But it's still not the deepest reason. The deepest reason is the focus on moments and how every moment is not worth clinging to, and how we cling to moments of experience in the present moment. Because birth, old age, sickness, and death are kind of referencing past and future. So they're kind of intellectually valuable, but they're not really valuable in the deeper sense in the practice. So yeah, valuable to consider. I mean, death in general is worth considering from time to time. Valuable as a reminder. And as you say, it develops samvega, which means a sense of urgency. The need to do something before you do get old, sick, and die. Be ready for it.
Bante, the next question. When I feel hurt because of family conflict, I remember what you said, that in ultimate reality, nothing truly happens. Yet, how can I truly embody this understanding when it seems and feels so real?
I say that. Who said that? That reality, nothing truly happens. I think we need context there as to why I would say such a thing. Probably it may not have been an exact quote that you're using there. Doesn't seem like it, because even if I did say it, it's not really correct. I mean, I might say things that are incorrect. Certainly possible. But what happens is experience. So in the context of your first statement, it is fairly accurate. None of those things happen. Family conflict doesn't actually happen. And this is because in ultimate reality, family doesn't exist, conflict doesn't exist. All that exists is seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, thinking. Those exist, and those happen. Those absolutely happen, ultimately happen. So that's what is real. And I guess I would say further, that is what seems to be real. That's not quite fair. It seems to you, to some extent, that the family conflict is real. So it's not just what seems real. But what I mean is that ultimately you're doing an extra step of interpreting the things that really do seem real. I wouldn't actually say it. You think that you're not actually experiencing family conflict. What you're experiencing is usually dislike, aversion. And it can be very intense aversion. It can be in the form of anger, frustration, fear, sadness. All of these are aversion. All of these are based on disliking or aversion. That's what's ultimately there. That's what seems real. That's what you can taste. You can taste the pain from that, the mental suffering from that. This is what you taste. You don't actually taste or experience conflict, so it doesn't really seem real. You just think it does. You interpret what you're experiencing as family conflict. But if you pay closer attention, you'd see that, oh yeah, I'm just referring, or I'm just talking about experiences. I'm disliking. Interpret that as something else. So I guess you can say that family conflict seems real, but it doesn't really seem real if you pay attention. There's no, what I mean to say is, it's actually quite simple to see through the illusion of it, because you're not experiencing it. If you pay any attention, you won't find it. You won't look and say, oh, there's the conflict, oh, there's the family. You won't see any of those things. You'll just see seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking, and all the emotions and things like that involved with the thinking, involved with the mind. So how do you separate what you're experiencing from what you're not experiencing? And you just attention, and that's all you really need to do. If you face the reality of the experience, that there's no place for family or conflict. It doesn't exist. And what I mean by there's no place in that. There is a place for family, and there is a place for addressing conflict in conceptual reality. But if you can make that distinction, that these are conceptual, these are not ultimately being experienced, separated from those things that you're actually experiencing, then you never have a problem. Yes, you can say, yes, my family has problems and I'm dealing with family. You can use these words. The Buddha talked about his family. He talked about family. He used these words. He understood them and he applied them, and he dealt with conflict conceptually. It was all based on his observation of the fact that none of it is truly real. So he would use those things functionally, but not be carried away into thinking that there was any meaning behind any reality or any existence behind family or conflict or anything like that. So the ultimate answer, how do you approach this, is you apply mindfulness, but you don't need to do more. You don't need to try to understand that something is real and something is not real. Just pay attention. You won't find those things. You don't have to go looking for them or looking to confirm that they're not there. Just focus on what's real, and you'll get a sense and a familiarity of what truly exists. And that frees you from so much stress and suffering, because you don't take those things seriously anymore. You understand? They're just concepts. They're not what's really happening.
The next question that we have, Bante. If noises from a neighbor causes anger during meditation, is it okay to use headphones or go to a quiet room? Or is metta/vipassana better? Or are both options fine in the long run?
You've used a word there. Words. Pick it apart a little bit, a couple of places. I'm not going to nitpick everything, but there's two things I want to point out. First, it's kind of nitpicking, but just to be clear, just so that we're clear, it may be clear to you. Noise doesn't cause anger. Noise is not enough to cause anger, and this is the crux of paticca samuppada, dependent origination. Noise arises, and noise can cause vedana. Not really, I suppose. Let's not get into that. Noise is an experience that you have, an experience of hearing. The only way that can give rise, the only way that can be in a sequence that leads to, how do I say this? The only way that can be connected, sequence that results in anger, is if there is also craving or attachment, wanting things to be a certain way, partiality, basically attachment. Without the attachment, hearing doesn't lead to anger. So hearing cannot lead in and of itself to anger. It requires delusion, it requires attachment. And that's important because it's a part of the solution. How you solve this problem is by learning to separate, learning to experience the noise objectively for what it is. It's not annoying. It's not upsetting. It's not even loud. It is still just a perception, a judgment. If it's blowing out your eardrums, it's still not loud. That's just relative, right? Point, you really should prevent that from happening, but it's the first part. In the long run, so you've given several options or a few options. Here's this word in the long run, and that's precisely the opposite of what I would say. So it's important to point this out. In the short run, in the short term, anything you've said is fine. Now, knocking on your neighbor's door to go and yell at them and get angry, that would never be fine. That would, in the short run, in the short term, very, very bad solution. There's no sense, long term, short term, where that would be good. But in the short term, retreating can be acceptable. In the long term, it will not be. So if in the short term you want to wear earphones, you want to go to a quiet place, that's okay. Well, it's acceptable. No problem. You can do that. Mainly because you're just learning. You're a student, right? Babies first learn to walk. You don't just let them walk down the street. You have them in a playpen. Now that they can walk, we got to take extra care to put gates up everywhere and prevent them and protect them from themselves. So you need lots of support, and you got to sort of baby yourself in the beginning. But as the baby learns to walk and learns right from wrong and good from bad and pain from that sort of thing, then you can give them more freedom. And more accurately, during training, you start off with training wheels, for example, on a bike. So Training wheels are fine in the short term, but you would never want to use training wheels in the long term. They just hold you back, right? They prevent you from getting better at riding a bike. But in the beginning, they can help you. So there's many ways that you can make training easier. Practice of mindfulness is a training. Let's be clear. Not you, but people who ask these sorts of questions often, necessarily you, often have the idea that meditation should be leading to greater and greater states of calm. It should be a relaxation. It should be a vacation. They don't really see it as a training, or they don't see it as the sort of training that it is, or that it should be. Mindfulness is a training to see clearly, without judgment, without reaction, without being triggered. Yes means seeing or experiencing the noise with clear awareness, with purity of mind, where you want to be. If you're avoiding things, if you're running away from them, you're just feeding the aversion. You're feeding the partiality. It's going to be worse in the future. But in the beginning, you're not concerned with that. You think, well, this is advanced stuff. I'm not ready. I'm not there yet. So in the short term, I will put on headphones. I will go to a quiet room. But you should always be thinking, when you do anything like that, that makes it easier, you should always be thinking, this is not to my advantage in the long term. This is to my disadvantage. The more I rely on this, the harder it's going to be, the weaker I'm going to be, the less I'm going to be to face things that I don't like. Yes, you should think like that, and in the long term, try to face your experiences rather than run from them. There's no shame in being weak, acknowledging your weakness, and gradually working towards improvement. That's the way of the Buddha.
Ante, the next question. I am always backsliding in my practice. If I stop for even a short time, all progress is seemingly lost and I go back to square one. Do you have any advice?
I was just talking with someone about this today, that it's often misleading to think that we're going somewhere. So being back at square one is often a very good sign. You're realizing that the way you were headed was not sustainable. It's usually just samatha. It's a good example of why samatha is not sufficient. Samatha is valuable, but not sufficient. Because if you stop, it just goes back. You just go back. That is not true gain. But you realizing that is true gain. Realizing non-self. All your efforts to control, to fix, to change, were all for naught. This is leading to dispassion. Slowly, slowly leading you to get tired. You're probably tired of meditation right now, which is actually kind of a good thing, but because you're tired of that meditation that was so forceful and pushy and controlling. And in the future, you're not going to do that. You're going to think, why would I bother forcing myself like that in the future? Learn how to just be present, how to just experience things without trying to fix or change them. You have a better sense of how to be mindful, or how to live, how to experience reality without stressing or suffering. It's valuable to come back to square one, to be defeated. Because who is defeated is the ego. It's humbling. It's to patience and contentment. It frees you from the greed Yes, spiritual greed is a real thing, where people are greedy, trying to strive for enlightenment. Striving for enlightenment is about being patient. Striving to be patient. Striving to be present, no matter what square you're at. Square 1, square 2, doesn't matter. It's still just squares. It's still just experience. It's still just reality. So the real benefit is often much more subtle. We think it's not this calm, tranquil state that we sometimes get. The real success and progress is being less triggered, less reactionary, less judgmental of square 1 or whatever. So try and face the square 1, whatever that means, whatever that is, those experiences, the emotions, rather than trying to fix them, try and just face them. That's the way to freedom.
The next question, Bante. How should I note the urge to look at the clock/timer during meditation?
Note it as wanting. If you look, say seeing. Again, you don't have to try to stop it, especially not in the beginning. Well, you should never really try to stop it. You should just try and face it. The more you try to stop it, try to prevent it, the more reactionary you're becoming, controlling, and this is an example of something that will not be sustainable in the long term. So if you're going to look, just say seeing. If you want to look, say wanting. If you can start to see why you want to look, because you're bored, because you're restless, craving something else, then you get deeper and you get more precise and more knowledgeable, more familiar with how your mind works. So it's quite valuable, actually. Don't think of it as a bad thing that you want to look. I mean, it is kind of a bad thing, but it's a good thing in that it gives you insight into how your mind works, and that's what you should take advantage of. Oh, here is an example of something I can learn. I can use to learn about how my mind works. When your mind is thinking, I want to look at the clock, look at that. Wanting. If you look, seeing. Feel after you looked. Just face it. That's that, because it will eventually lead to getting tired of it. Start to think, not again. My mind wants to look at the clock again. Oh, again. And just think, oh, why bother? You're familiar with it. You know that there's nothing special about looking at the clock that's going to make your life better in any way. So you just don't need to look at the clock anymore.
The next question, Bante. I can be consistent with my meditation for a short time, but I tend to falter, and it feels like I have to work my way back into it again. Can you please give me tips to be more consistent?
I mean, again, it's kind of misunderstanding the nature of mindfulness. Consistent. Consistent as a word is okay, but usually or often what you really mean is stable. And mindfulness is not going to be stable. It's going to show you the instability. That's the whole point. So often what you're seeing is correct, but the way you're looking at it is wrong when people say these sorts of things. And feeling like you have to work your way back into what? To a state of stability? Not possible. Nothing stable. That's what you're trying to see. And that's what you're seeing. Again, often what you're seeing is correct. But quite often you're not getting it. And that's understandable, because that's the whole point. We've got it wrong. And mindfulness is going to show us that. Show us the instability, the uncertainty. So you can't say, I'm going to figure this out and then I'm just going to always be mindful. The only way you can always be mindful is when you've seen that it's not under your control and you've let go to the point where you're just objective. Stop trying to fix things. Stop trying to control things. Stop trying to... But I guess what you're maybe referring to is meditation itself. Get back into it. More consistent with actually practicing. I don't even think that's something you should be too concerned with. Just do it when you have the chance. Be mindful when you have a chance. I think there are practically things you can do in that regard. You can undertake meditation courses. That's really the crux of it, take meditation courses. But you can join groups like this. This is, even you asking this question is a good sign. I mean, it's a sign that you're interested in meditation. But the best way, it's kind of like learning a language. If you want to learn a language, the best way is with a teacher. So this isn't really self-promotion. You can find any teacher, go find another teacher, that's fine. But seriously, find a teacher and a meditation center. We have all these rooms now here at our center. And we have no one coming to meditate. We have the facilities. And many places, there are many places that you can go to practice. And that's a great way to develop consistency. Having the accountability to a teacher and to a meditation program.
The next question, Bante. Regarding access concentration, I am still confused. Will a Vipassana meditator attain jhana through access concentration? My previous understanding was that the attainment of jhana would be through samatha meditation.
Two types of jhana, according to the orthodoxy. Lakkhana-upanijjhana and Arammana-upanijjhana. Another categorization is there is samatha jhana, there is vipassana jhana, and there is lokuttara jhana, which is a third category. So the word jhana is complicated, or complex anyway. But if you mean the sort of jhana that comes from samatha practice, that's very different from the sort of jhana that comes from vipassana practice. But there's still, the word jhana just means meditation. And in Buddhism, it refers to a state of meditation without the hindrances. But there are two types. Arammana means object. So Arammana-upanijjhana means jhana which is focused on a single object. That's conceptual. It can only be conceptual because no single object lasts. No real object lasts for more than a moment. So if you're going to focus on a single object, it has to be conceptual. Otherwise, it's already gone. Lakkhana-upanijjhana means focusing on things that are lakkhana, that have the three characteristics: impermanence, suffering, and non-self. And you enter into jhana, meaning you become free from the hindrances because of seeing the three characteristics. So why that happens is because through wisdom, the mind no longer reacts, no longer likes or dislikes or so on. The mind is very clear and very pure and very objective, even though it's still focused on multiple objects. It can be considered jhana. Then there's lokuttara jhana, which means focus on nibbana. So at the moment of cessation, when the mind lets go, and there's an experience of cessation. That's called jhana because the mind is fixed and focused. So, sorry, that's the exception. There is a single object that you can be focused on that isn't conceptual, and that is nibbana. So there is an exception. Because at that moment, I mean, it's technically you're focused on a single object, but nibbana it's hard to talk about. But it's not like being focused on a single object. It is, but to say that nibbana is an object, except that technically it is the object. I don't know if I've made it less confusing. It's not something you should concern yourself with, but it is valuable to understand the difference between focusing on a single object as a concept and focusing on ultimate reality, because it will feel very different. So it's never going to feel peaceful and calm and fixed and sure and controllable, all those things that we like and want and seek out. It's going to feel quite the opposite. Momentary concentration is going to feel chaotic, unpredictable, unsatisfying, and uncontrollable. It's going to make you give up. It's going to make you let go.
The next question, Bante. Recently, I've become very drawn to the idea of non-duality. I feel that I understand it to some extent on an intellectual level, and I try to bring this understanding into daily life through mindfulness. However, when it arises in direct experience, I often feel puzzled or unsure how to relate to it. Could you please offer me any guidance on how to practice and integrate non-duality in everyday life?
Non-duality has no place in Theravada Buddhism. It's not what we teach. So you've been misled and misunderstanding about it, which is, I mean, it's common. This is a common sort of question that we get, but I think people are drawn to it because of the romantic nature of it as an idea. It makes things easier. Non-duality, it has a sort of poetic or one sort of idea. So non-duality in terms of me and you are all one. And in terms of self, in terms of me, non-duality means there's only me, there's only the self, but that's not real. Reality is duality. Reality is the duality of body and mind. There are two parts to reality, the physical and the mental. There's the object and the perception of the object. So it doesn't really have a place in Buddhism, sorry. I mean, the plus to that, the positive to that, is that you don't have to. If you're puzzled or unsure how to relate to it, that's great, because when you focus on reality, it doesn't have any place in that. So you can stop puzzling over it. You can stop worrying about it because it just isn't real. It's just a concept. It's an idea.
The next question that we have, Bante. What does it mean to be ready to die?
Ultimately, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, if you're ready for the next moment, you're ready for the moment of death. So it just means to be pure so that you're not to experiences. But practically speaking, most of our moments of experience aren't triggering the way death is triggering. The moment of death, there can be a lot of fear, there can be a lot of attachment, stress, and a lot of suffering, and a lot of unwholesomeness. So for someone who hasn't prepared for it or hasn't trained themselves, they're not ready for that. It's like, what does it mean to be ready to die? The same thing as it means to be ready to get in a car accident or get cancer or lose a loved one or lose your job. Down and hit your head. Are you ready for all these things? Is up there. Death is a scary thing, and more importantly, it's a consequential thing, the consequential moment. Moment of death, you consign yourself, or you resign yourself to a deterministic process, meaning you locked yourself into the next life. So if at the moment of death, grasp onto something that leads to be born as a dog, then you're stuck with that. You're born as a dog, and that's where you're stuck. So it's important to experience death with a clear mind, with a pure mind, with a strong mind. If you're not able to do that, you're not ready for it. So it means two things. On the one hand, it means being ready for something that is scary and triggering. On the other hand, it means being ready for something that is monumental, that is consequential, that is important. There's those two factors to it. But the state of being ready is just the state of being pure in mind, strong in mind, trained with a mind that is not triggered, a mind that is not going to give rise to wholesomeness. Because there are occasions in life where that happens as well. When confronted with a difficult situation, we often make bad decisions. When someone experiences great loss, they might turn to drugs or alcohol. They might kill themselves. There's lots of bad decisions that we make because we're not ready for such things. But death is a big one. It's the most consequential. So most important to be ready for. But again, ready just means strong and well-trained of mind.
The next question, Bante. When does the acceptance of I can't control it become laziness? From what I understand, should we not control it and just note it? If that's the case, what is effort then?
So you've introduced a word there that's not really very Buddhist, and that's acceptance. Buddhists don't accept things. That's what leads to acceptance, is what leads to negligence and idleness and so on. But it's not acceptance, it's knowledge. That knowledge doesn't stop you from acting. It isn't an acceptance. It just prevents you from getting upset. But the actions still occur. It also prevents you from trying to control. Why does it do that? It does that, and this is important, because you understand that you can't control. What that means is an ordinary person will act in such a way that they're ultimately frustrated. They're defeated. They can't control, but they think they can. All they get out of that is stress and suffering. An enlightened person doesn't do that because they see it's just stress and suffering. So they don't try to control. They just act. They do what is appropriate in every moment. It's the way of being. It's not acceptance, but it's not control. Because they don't have any interest in either. They would have no interest in accepting anything. Maybe it's just mincing words, but you use the word acceptance is a way that allows you to then say it's kind of easy. No, not acceptance, it's knowledge. Whether you accept it or not, it's true. You could call it acceptance, but it's not the state of mind. The state of mind is knowing, and that knowing doesn't lead to acceptance. It just leads to efficiency, accuracy. It leads to a rightness, where you stop doing things that aren't going to possibly have any benefit. You stop trying to control, because it just doesn't work that way. You should never try to control, but you should still act in ways that are right, proper, beneficial, helpful to yourself and others.
The next question, Bhante. How can I get to nirvana?
Have you read our booklet on how to meditate? That's a good place to start. If you've done that, we have an at-home course. You can practice at home, meet with a teacher once a week. That's a good way to continue. If you've done that, we have lots of empty rooms here to come and try to get to Nibbana. Well, that's our way to help you do it. Come and see. That's how you get to Nibbana.
The next question, Bhante. Can you please elaborate on the word maganga and how it relates to our practice?
Well, Maganga doesn't really... So there are two maggas. Magga is path. There's the Pubanga Magga and the Arya Magga. What we practice is called the Pubanga Magga. Puba just means preliminary or prior. It's what you do prior to attaining the noble path. The noble path is a moment where the mind lets go. So it's not really something you practice. Those are the two maggas. Magga is the practice, and the magga which actually destroys the defilements. It's that moment where the mind lets go. Those maggas has 8 angas, 8 parts. So the Eightfold Noble Path is the Arya Atangika Magga. Atanga. Ika means that which has. Atanga means 8 parts. Anga, atta 8 anga part. So the Eightfold Noble Path is the path with 8 angas. That's what the word maganga means. There are the 8 magangas. It's just a word that, it's a very simple word. It doesn't have a deep meaning. How it relates to our practice, it doesn't really. It's just grammatically how you say something with 8 parts, something with parts. A magga with parts is a magga with anga. So those parts are called magga. Magga means path.
The next question, Bante. Can you elaborate on the 4 types of nutriment? Nutriment of food is explanatory. Can you give examples of the other 3? Nutriment of sense, thought, and consciousness?
Well, you have to look it up in the commentary. There's very actually technical definitions of each of the 4. But nutriment means something that gives results. Ahara. Ahara means that which brings something. So it's, Manosanchetana. There's 4 aharas.
Until you gave a whole talk on YouTube on that. I think I'm gonna post it in the YouTube chat.
Yeah, there is a talk on YouTube. I'm wrong, actually. I can't remember how it went, but I got one of them wrong. It's a fairly technical topic. I'm not inclined to go over it here. I don't quite have it on the top of my head what the 4 are even. I don't want to get it wrong. Karahara is the physical nutriment. The other ones are Vijnana and Manosa. Vijnanahara is consciousness. Rebirth consciousness gives rise to birth. Manosanchetana is karma, which gives rise to result. So these are things like karma brings fruit. So that's clearly it's like a nutriment. It gives a special kind of thing, a consequence. Physical nourishment, it gives the body, gives strength and health and feces and all the 32 parts of the body. Something. Manosanchetana is karma that gives result. Vijnana, am I right that Vijnana is one of them? Vijnana, because it's the rebirth consciousness. And the 4th is Asahara, I think. The content? No, you didn't. I don't know. Probably got it wrong. Have to look it up.
I gave you I think in the Discord, it may be this what you're talking about in the chat.
Someone look them up. Kablinka. I was right. I was right. I got them right. Haha. So Pasahara, because Pasa gives rise to Vedana. Pasa means contact. So Vedana is very meaningful. And because Pasa is what gives rise to, Pasa means when you contact something, when you see or hear, when the mind comes in contact with the thing to be seen or heard, there arises Vedana. So that's meaningful. It's basically about things that have meaningful consequences. It's just a part of how reality works. It's things that are pointed out or singled out as being being especially conductive of special results.
The next question that we have, Bante. I want to learn the Mahasi Sayadaw tradition of meditation while understanding the rising and falling or labeling method. How will this technique help to develop wisdom?
Okay, let's see it. Just a second. Well, I did talk a little bit about that tonight. So I don't know if you were listening, but wisdom means that which leads one to let go. There are three things that do that: impermanence, seeing impermanent, seeing suffering, seeing non-self, seeing that inside of ourselves and in the world around us, everything is unpredictable, impermanent, chaotic, and unstable. Seeing that inside of ourselves and in the world around us, everything is unsatisfying, not worth clinging to, not worth anything. And seeing that inside of ourselves and in the whole world around us, nothing is ours, nothing is under our control or belongs to us. Nothing is a self or an entity in and of itself. Nothing is a lasting, stable entity. So if you understand this, it's pretty clear why mindfulness, or it should be fairly clear, fairly easy to understand why mindfulness leads to wisdom. So our normal, ordinary experience doesn't lead to wisdom because we react to our experiences. We judge them, we interpret them. We dwell on concepts, we conceive about everything. We conceive me, we conceive mine, all these conceivings, ahankara, mamankara, liking and disliking, judging everything. When you train yourself to experience things just as they are, in a clarity that was absent, and you start to see that the things you thought were stable are not stable, the things you thought were satisfying are not satisfying, things you thought were controllable are not controllable, not you, not yours. It's because that's just the way they are. And when you free yourself from all the interpretation, all the judgment, all the conceiving, it becomes very simple and very clear. Nothing is worth clinging to. So I don't know if you read our booklet on how to meditate. If you're interested in doing the at-home course, that's a good place to start, or that's one way to start. The perfect weather all year round. I can't tell you how great this place is. It's just perfect weather, very few mosquitoes. I've lived in places where there were too many mosquitoes all over the world, where we have good rooms, good food, and water. You can drink the water out of the tap here. Not today because we have an issue with our well, but the water, even today, the water is not dangerous. There's no pollutants. We have, we have a dedication to the Theravada and the Mahasi Sayadaw tradition. The lineage that we follow is the Swajan Nikaya. The Nikaya that this monastery belongs to is the Swajan Nikaya, which was Mahasi Sayadaw's group, Mahasi Sayadaw's Nikaya. So we are very much a part of that here. It's one option. There are other places around the world that could even be better for practice. So certainly check your options, but this is an option.
And it's all for free. No one is asking anyone for anything.
For free. For free, for freedom.
Bhante, we've reached the end of our second hour, so we will stop our session there. Just want to thank you for your insight and wisdom, and we are deeply grateful for you sharing the Dhamma with us and for answering everyone's questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much, Bhante.
Thank you to all the volunteers. Speaking of volunteers, I have an interesting idea that I'd like to propose for anyone who is interested in volunteering. It may be that there are questions here that are useful, important, let's put it that way, important questions, and that it may be that the answers to some of those questions are also valuable, useful, that they offer something. If that is the case, if you find any answers like that in any of these, the problem is they're hard to find. So if there is any valuable, important questions and useful answers one finds, what I'd like is some volunteers to point those out, and a volunteer on our YouTube channel to post those, to see if it's possible to post those as individual videos. There's something called shorts on YouTube. And I don't know how they work, but they're short, hence the name. So if there's anyone who can look into that, and if we could see if it's possible to pull some things out that might be useful. I mean, people who have short attention spans, it might be a great in for them to, no one's going to, very few people, my father watches these, he doesn't watch the Q&A, but it's hard for people to watch these long sessions, especially after the fact, when there's not the sense of engagement. It might be valuable or possible. There are people who can do that, who have access on the YouTube channel, and might be able to into that. So just something as if you all don't do enough. Appreciate all the work that you do, that those of you who have come out and are making this happen and working behind the scenes to collect the questions, to moderate the chat, and do all that you do. I appreciate that. I hope that everyone else appreciates that you're doing this out of the goodwill of your hearts, and that they give you the benefit of allowing you to moderate and orchestrate this session. To all the people who came out to read, you are also volunteers. You're volunteering your voice. Parato Ghosa, another person's voice. There's two ways of learning the Dhamma, from your own practice and from hearing it from someone else. So of course we have to learn it for ourselves, but hearing it from someone else can be an essential, crucial part of our practice. You have given your voice to all these people. Thank you to everyone who asked good questions. I appreciate it. Even if it seemed like maybe I didn't appreciate your question, I do appreciate it. And asking bad questions is often a great thing because it helps correct misunderstandings or be clear about something that might not have been clear before, so that's absolutely fine. Thank you all for coming out to listen and take part. There's a great quality of mindfulness in these sessions. We're inclined in a good way, even just to be aware that we're sitting. It's a great way to spend time that we have in this life. So with all the goodness of all the deeds that you have all done, all the goodness on this occasion and all the goodness that you have cultivated in this life and in past lives, may all of that be a support, along with the power of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. All may you
You are cutting out a bit, Bante.
to find peace, happiness.
It looks like we've lost connection to Venerable Yuttadhammo. But thank you to everyone. We will stop our stream there. Sadhu.